Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. If you're listening to the replay of this, welcome. My name is Catherine Spear, and I am here today with Lori Andrews of Blue Energetics. And she also may have gotten that wrong, Lori, but you you can correct me. Lori is a dear friend. She's become a very dear friend this past year, and certainly somebody who's helped me immensely with understanding myself a little bit better and how I show up for myself and in the world. And today we're going to talk about gene keys. And one of the things that I love so much about this in my season of life, perimenopause, menopause, helping myself and learning how to help others. One of the key things is that, we go through this phase of life, but I call it a phase of life that comes back to your true self and understanding who you truly are without all the noise of, raising kids and careers and all the things that we, try to and strive to become in our 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I fully believe that this season of life allows us to come back to ourselves and uncover. And so Lori has been a catalyst with helping me this past year through my gene keys. So today we're here with Lori Andrews, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit more about herself and what she offers before we dive into the gene keys, and she's going to take it away. So Lori, thank you so much. And I see I got your name spelled wrong as well too. I forgot the I. Look at that. You can
Oh,
tell that we ladies are showing up raw, vulnerable, and just as we are. So good morning, Lori.
good morning. That could be me that made that mistake. I didn't have my glasses on. I typed it in. So thank you, Catherine. I always love sharing about the gene keys. So this is a great opportunity. Something I'd like to do first before we begin. This is something that is very common that we do in the gene keys world. We really want to ground in and attune ourselves before we really get into the nitty gritty. So, what I thought I'd do, I wanted to read one of my favorite passages out of the Gene Keys. It's from Gene Key 25. And Gene Key 25 is the one that Richard says if you're going to read any Gene Key, read Gene Key 25. And so I'm just going to start us with this paragraph, and it'll kind of set the tone and maybe give people an indication of what the Gene Keys are all about. So this is Gene Key 25, the gift. Oh, make sure I get it right. The gift of acceptance. Acceptance is the grail that you are seeking. When you can finally accept everything in your life just as it is right now, you will have embraced the human wound. Acceptance comes in layers, layers upon layers, just like tightly wound genetic double helix itself. You have to relax these layers deep inside you so you can feel the flow of love once more moving within your being. The more you can accept yourself and others, the more love will bloom in your life. It is as beautiful and simple as that. That is the essence of the Gene Keys. So I'll start by maybe telling a little bit about myself and how I came to, or how the Gene Keys came to me.
Very important.
Yeah. So a lifelong seeker, always having this feeling of there was more to life, and just grasping at whatever was out there.
Mhm.
And my main career was that as frontline domestic violence worker and counseling, and that career, it led me on this journey of self discovery because seeing so much uh, pain and trauma, um, it really deepened my journey. I didn't have the Gene Keys then, which it would have made a world of difference if I did. Um, but even in that world, in that, traditional therapy and counseling, it was all about empowerment and how to empower women um, to live their own life. And so through that journey coming to the end of that, and then I went into a whole journey of discovering myself and healing from that. And so that is how, like, I was doing different modalities and studying different things. And they always say you don't find the gene keys find you when it's time.
Yep.
And how it happened, I love the story, because you just, it goes to show this is how it works. So I was, doing my usual, listening to podcasts, videos, and things on, empowerment and discovering about ourselves. And I was listening to one that was interviewing Peter Tung, a Gene Key ambassador. And okay, sounds interesting. By the end of that interview, I was looking up flights to BC, because I thought Peter's in British Columbia. I thought, I need to meet this man and I need to find out about the Gene Keys. It just hit me in my heart. And so that was fine. Like within the hour, opened up social media. Someone had posted a poster that Gene Key ambassador Peter Tung was coming to Mahone Bay to do a retreat. Well, I almost fell out of the chair. I'm like it was just landed in my lap. And so that was 2018, and I have not stopped. I've been to everything, all the retreats. I've met Richard twice, Richard Rudd, the founder of the Gene Keys. And so that began my journey. So I'll start, next I'll move into Richard and what the Gene Keys are.
And how they are. Just before you do that, though, Lori, I want to kind of pull everyone's attention back to a couple of key things that you said, okay? Right. And that is, for all the people that are joining us, right? I want everybody to drop a heart, or, actually, let's drop a 1, right? I'm big in numbers as well, too. Let's drop a 1 if you're listening to this live into the comments, or if you're listening to it later on. And how many of you have always felt this knowing that there's more to life, there's more to your life, there's more that you're supposed to be doing, but you're just not sure, because there's so many of us out there, right? I can relate to what you just said. You said you were always seeking something more because you knew, right? So I always call that my soul calling, or your soul trying to guide you, because that's me. I've always known that as a little child, right? And you yourself, Lori, knew that too. So I know there's a lot more of us out there. So let's connect. That was the 1. But also something you had said is that in the work that you did, right? Isn't it interesting? And it amazes me how when we show up for service to others, those others reflect back to us things that we also are seeking ourselves, but didn't know it. And I love what you said, because it leads us back to our own inner work. You had said, oh boy, if you'd only had the Gene Keys back then, right? But also I think that the work that we do helps us to find, they always say, when you're ready, the master appears. And sometimes the master is not, maybe a human, or in this case, it would be Richard Rudd and the work that he did, the Gene Keys, because it's a ripple effect, right? When we show up with truth, it's a ripple effect. So thank you for saying those 2 things, Lori. And I just really wanted to pull people back into those 2 things, because as you start to talk about the Gene Keys, this is where it helps us to go deeper into ourselves. So thank you for that. Go ahead, Lori.
Excellent. Yeah, so true. So I'll give you a bit of Richard's story and how the Gene Keys came to be. It's always better hearing it from him, in which you can, on his website, thegenekeys.com. He has many videos, or his YouTube channel, where he also discusses different aspects of his journey. But essentially what happened, Richard, also a seeker, spent a good part of his life traveling and studying and diving deep into all these different wisdom teachings and doing on his own journey. And at one point during that, he's had a couple of different times where he's had a mystical experience where, he went into a different space, a different plane, and information was given to him. And that's how the gene keys came to be. It's an energetic transmission. So it came to him from the causal plane. He had a 3-day experience where this information came down into him. It then took him 7 years to put it in a form that we now have today called the gene keys. So I'll show you my book, but mine's the older version. The new version is a dark blue. There are 64 gene keys. So
that's the new one, everybody.
Yeah, that's the newer version. The ancient Chinese I Ching, 64 hexagrams in the I Ching. The gene keys are direct from that. It's like a modern day I Ching. So there's 64 that go around the wheel of the year. So the way I like to break it down that makes it a little bit easier to understand is that every day we have a different energy come in. So there's 64 gene keys. There's 365 days in the year. So about every 5.5 days, we have a different gene key. We have a different energy that comes in. If you think of astrology, we're in Aries season. So the month of Aries, you would actually have 5 different gene keys within that month. So it's like, if you think of it as an energy that flavors who we are. So how Richard was able to put it so that it's usable was that through using our birth date, our time of birth, and our birthplace, it came in with what are our most significant gene keys, what energies flavor us. So that's kind of my way to explain it, is that, we come in with this soul's blueprint, and these gene keys help us to remember who we are. And that is what the chart does. So you would plug in your information and you receive a chart, and this gives you your main gene keys and what energy flavors you. So it helps you navigate through this world and how to understand yourself better.
Yeah, so it certainly does. And for everybody that's following, you'll see this chart that Lori's referencing to. You'll see it here. I'm sharing it. So now this is my own chart, but it doesn't come with all the handwritten stuff on it, obviously. But this is what happens, though, when you go out to the website, genekeys.com. It's free to do your profile. I had did my profile, and I was like, oh, it's really interesting. I went to ChatGPT. I typed in, a bunch of stuff, trying to learn it. But here's where the difference was. When I booked the appointment with Lori, and then she guided me through the deeper aspects of what this meant, it was a game changer for me. So I just wanted to make sure that this chart that I'm showing is what Lori is talking about. Okay. So sorry, Lori, I don't want to interrupt there, but I just want to make sure that people had it.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great, we'll look at the chart. I guess what I want to say about the chart before I get into it, and about the gene keys overall, is because they are an energetic transmission, we can, of course, we will read it and have an understanding, but they are not to be studied. It is energetic. So it actually, it's like it pings our DNA. It's a remembrance, so it's not like, you see this big book and people think, oh my gosh, I got to study this and know all this. No, you don't. You actually just, you can read it and get an understanding, but it actually becomes embodied because it is an energetic transmission. You actually feel it in your body, and I like the saying from cerebral to cellular. It goes into your body. It's a cellular transmission. So it's a little different than a lot of things that, you have to study and you have to understand. And it's kind of, we do it, and to whatever degree we want to do it. You can study one of your gene keys, and that be it. Everyone's different and how deep they want to go, or what they need to do, what they feel called to do.
Hmm.
It's completely up to whatever anyone wants. But just knowing that in itself, um, makes a difference. So I always kind of tell people that not to get overwhelmed, because a lot of things, when they see the book and they see the chart, it's like, oh, what is all this? Um, I try and keep it quite simple,
You
and
do.
because I believe that is how it should be. If someone chooses to go deeper, and believe me, you can go deep, and there's all that's on the website, and courses and things like that. But um, I think looking at a couple of your keys can kind of help give people an idea of how it works, you know? Um, yeah, so let's start there. I'm gonna do a little overview of just what we're looking at.
Please.
Yeah, so you're going to see three on the side, say the top gene key, you'll see 31.1, and you see three words beside it: arrogance, leadership, humility. This is actually, because it's a frequency transmission, this is actually a frequency band showing the shadow of that, the gift of that, and the Siddhic frequency. The Siddhic frequency is a very high level frequency. So it shows um, we are all that. We are not just one thing. We are all that. We can dip down into the shadow. This has actually been the most important part for me of the gene keys. Is a lot of people talk about shadow work and darkness, and the gene keys really help you to understand that they're not bad.
No.
It's just frequency. So it really helps when like, oh, my frequency's down, I'm into that shadow. It gives you um, an understanding and some language around that to help you better understand what's going on with you,
Mm-hmm.
because that is what this is about. This is not even me being a guide for the gene keys, not about me telling you it's your chart. So as guides, even in that, we have to be careful as to not um, put too much of our wording and influence in, because this is your chart. So I kind of give people an understanding of what they're looking at, but it is yours to journey through, right? So okay, so that top one is called your life's work. Life's work is your expression out in the world. Um, it's not about, oh, am I supposed to be a plumber? Am I supposed to be that? It's your expression. It's what you bring to that. What is the energy you bring to that work, right? So if we look at yours, the 31 is leadership in the gift. So your life's work is to be in a leadership, some type of leadership position. Now, you can drop into the lower frequency of that, and in the arrogance position, you could, um, just be like, well, it's my way or the highway. That would be an example of dropping frequency, that you would not take others into account in leadership. A true leader leads with people beside them, not ahead of them. So, arrogance, if you were in the shadow, your arrogance may put you thinking like you're above and you know better than everyone else. So that can come in, that's just part of it. And then you kind of check in with yourself, where am I leading from? So because you're a 31.1, and I'll get into that lines as well. You are a creator. A line one, if you think um, the root chakra, you think, creation. So you need to create your own way of leading. You don't follow others. Right? So that gives you an example of how I
Yeah.
would explain that,
Yeah.
right?
But when you explained it, okay, I'm going to share this real quick because it's a funny haha, and I want people to understand this, right? So when you do your gene keys and you go to Lori and she guides you, you're going to have these epiphany moments of you're like, oh, right? And so for me, what she just shared, okay, so I can go back in time in my life and I can absolutely tell you where I was in arrogance, 100%. Because you go back, right? And you think, huh, oh my gosh, yeah, there was a time in my life that I definitely was, right? I can tell you it was in my 20s and early 30s. There were things where not 100% that I was like that, but there were certain aspects of me that showed up in that range, right? But then when Lori said, Catherine, she goes, it doesn't matter what you do. And I'm going to use the donkey here because it was so funny because I was really truly trying to find my thing and thinking that I was trying to fit into some boxes, people, okay? And it wasn't feeling very good to me. And then Lori said, she explained my 31.1, right? And the one, because I'm a creator and I lead in my way and in my energy and what have you. But Lori said to me, for those of you who are following along and you know that the donkey energy showed up a lot for me this year, it came out of nowhere. And again, I'm going to tell people be careful because you never know where or what's going to show up in your life that gives you that clue of where you're either off the path or what energy that you need. But Lori looked at me and she's like, Catherine, it's like this. She goes, if you decided to go off grid and have all your donkeys and you're just at home, you're in leadership. Somebody's going to drive down your driveway and just say, can you just take over and lead the donkey association of whatever? And so I burst out laughing because it helped me to realize and stop trying to hide behind who I truly was in my essence and not trying to fit into boxes that I was trying to put myself into. It just is. So when you learn, and this isn't about me, guys, okay? I really want you to know that. I told Lori I am an open book and I don't mind sharing my story because it helps others, right? When we can, that's my way of leading. It's just being open and vulnerable so it helps somebody else. But when Lori said that day, it made so much sense. So hopefully that helps you to kind of understand. But because it's your life's work, it's your top gene key, right? That's your life's work. That is who you are here to be. And then I'll stop because Lori's going to explain some other things as to why these things all work together.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's a great explanation. It's a great way to show it. And that is essentially what the gene keys do. They help connect the dots. It's a remembrance, and it just helps to clarify some things and accept who, again, what I read at the first about acceptance. It is about accepting your lot in life. I mean, this, especially now where we're fed such a, oh my gosh, I mean, the social media and we got to lead the perfect life and all the boxes ticked off, and it is such, we've been sold such a bill of goods that is like, it's no wonder people feel depressed and that they're not doing enough and we're constantly not enough. That's not our journey. If that's not our journey and we're constantly looking out there, no wonder we feel the way we feel. So the gene keys or anything that brings you back to yourself,
Yeah.
to kind of close that off, that outer world, and come back to yourself. And this helps to align you with your true purpose. So it can shut off a lot of the noise, and bring us back and just give us that solid feeling within ourselves. So, okay. So what I want to do is give an overview first, and then I want to pick out another one of your gene keys, which is quite
Sure.
significant. So, because if I go through every gene key, we'll be here all day. So we talked about the life's work, Then you're going to see the 41.1 as evolution. That's your biggest challenge in this in living your life's work. So those are what's called programming partners. So they challenge each other. When you come down to the other side, I know the color's a bit off, but it should be kind of greenish looking. You have 27.3 and 28.3. Those four gene keys are called your activation sequence. They are 70% of who we are. So they're the biggies. A lot of people just do the activation sequence. And, that can give you a real solid structure on who you are and what you came here to do. The 27.3 is called radiance. That's our health and vitality, our aura. Usually it's something we may not be fully aware of. These can be more hidden gene keys, the 27 and the 28. The 28, the bottom of your chart, it's your beingness. It's called the purpose gene key, and it's not about what is my purpose in the world. It's your purpose. It's your beingness here. It's not something you have to outwardly do. It's an inward knowing of who you are. So that's very important for our core stability in this world. Okay, so those four gene keys, very important. So what happens when we do the activation? And so it gives us a pretty good handle on how we're operating, what we're here to do. And when we get that, then we decide, okay, you know what? I want to go deeper. And how we go deeper is what's next. And these next four gene keys are called the Venus sequence. The Venus sequence takes us deeper into our childhood wounding, relationships. So when we come from the 28, and you'll see we go up into the 27.3. That's our relationship sphere. It's our attraction, our magnetics. It's built into who we are. So we will see that in our relationships in the world and how we operate with other people. We come up into what is called our EQ and our IQ. Sorry, my glasses. IQ, EQ, and SQ. So your IQ, you're looking at ages 15 to 21. So what we're doing is we're unwinding the childhood wound, going backwards, going from the older down to our younger self. So 15 to 21, this will show you what was going on. And if you look at the shadow frequency, where you may have struggled during that time. And so then you think, have I healed that from that time? Have I healed that? It's not a one and done, like this operates in layers. We heal, we get an understanding, and we go along, and then we heal a little deeper, right? So I mean, it's not to think, okay, once I get this done, then I'm done. This is our life's work.
Yeah.
So we come through that, then we go to our EQ, our emotional quotient, the emotional body. And that's from 8 to 14. And we look at those, we look at that shadow, we look at that gift. We think back to that time in our life and what was going on. Where were we at? And it can really help us to pinpoint something that may have happened that we haven't looked at. Mm-hmm. And in those times, not being able to deal with because we were young. We just packed it away. It locked in our body somewhere. And so these can help us to unlock that. So the SQ, this is from 0 to 7, and this is the one I want us to dive into because it was also very interesting for you. 25.4, the 25 I read earlier, very powerful gene key from 0 to 7. So when Catherine and I met, And we talked about that time in her life from 0 to 7 and the shadow of constriction. And I'll let Catherine, like, when you think constriction, like, how are you held down? How are you restricted in life? And Catherine, told me of what took place during that time, and I'll let her tell the story, and then you can see how that comes into play.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Lori. This was really profound for me. A lot of the gene keys that Lori took me through were profound with this one. If you want an example of, are these things really truly in tune with your energy blueprint? What I'm about to share with you. And Lori said 0 to 7, Catherine, is about constriction. I was sitting on her couch beside her and I went like this and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I had tears in my eyes. And I'm going to tell you why. Because constriction. When I was 6 years old, I was run over by a pulp truck. It was a bad accident, and it was truly an accident. And it wasn't just random, it was my dad. So you see, my dad and I won't go into this today, but my dad and I had a soul contract with one another. I know we did. But I said to Lori, I said, you want to talk about constriction? You're run over by a pulp truck, you're in a body cast, you're in, your legs are in, I forget what they call it, before you're into the body cast. I mean, that was total constriction at its depth at 6 years old. So that between that 0 and 7. And, it was about during that time of being seen, being accepted, being loved. And that was how my soul, energy, my physical body experienced that gene key during that time of 0 to 7. So it was pretty profound for me when Lori shared that, because I was like, wow, that was a very strong, strong, strong gene key for me. And it's about acceptance, right? And I guess let me share this piece too, Lori, is because the gift of that, right, is acceptance. And what's really interesting is that I never hung a hat on that accident for anything in life. It's so bizarre because when I share this with certain people or different practitioners, whatever, back then it was, I mean, I was lucky to be alive, right? My mom had shared that the doctor at the time had said, when she said, is she going to be okay? And the doctor said, if you believe in miracles. And I remember hearing that on that table. So here I am, I'm still alive, right? I was not in a wheelchair. I'll never forget the day that they brought the wheelchair in after the body cast came off. I'm like, nope, that ain't happening. But it was an acceptance of it happened. And I fully believe in my soul so deep. And I don't know why I know it, but that accident was so much deeper than just a physical accident. There was something between my dad and I that we decided to go through something together. Um, and as crazy as it sounds, I feel very blessed by it because there's never been a physical aspect from that accident, right? No arthritis, no, deformities, no, I mean, I had to learn how to walk all over again and crawl and all those things at that age, but it was never something that I hung my hat on that defined me. So I know that there was something more deeper with that. So
Mm,
anyways, I'll just share that piece and let it go.
that's beautiful. I mean, we couldn't have a better example of how this actually tangibly shows up in our life. And the Venus sequence is it's powerful, and it can be very very deep work. And for anyone that has suffered a lot of trauma, it is work to be. It's very sacred. There are, it can show up abuse, sexual abuse can show up, and so it is something that people need. That's why it's always, about going through the activation first to kind of get you grounded before you dive into this deeper work, or to do that work along with someone. Um, so, okay, SQ 0 to 7. So then we go up into, and you'll see this next gene key has two colors. Reason being is that it's actually part of the Venus sequence, but then also becomes part of the next sequence, the Pearl sequence. It is your core wound, your ancestral lineage wound that you brought in, and then it becomes your vocation. So if you think of our deepest wound can become our greatest service.
Mhm.
And that's what that's about. That's about when you really get to that core wounding and what you came in with. That tends to then, when you reach a certain level of healing, you can then take that and be of service and and use that in the world. And that is what the pearl sequence is about. The pearl sequence is about our service in the world. um, it's I love the little quote of as we are blessed, may we be a blessing.
Mhm.
So if we are blessed enough to do our healing work and reach that point that we can then turn around and help someone else up, we can then share it. So our deepest wound becomes our greatest service. So that's why that has the two colors. So then we go over to culture. So that is about how do you have what's the environment that you share best? How do you share in this world? Your work environment. We can look at yours as strength. You have great strength, so you can. But the shadow would be force, like pushing people, forcing people, and then you're in your shadow. But if you stand in your own knowing, your own strength, again, that leadership comes through, right? And then the pearl is, I call it the accumulation point, because it's like there's nothing we really do with the pearl. It's just like after it's all said and done, this is a beautiful energy that we then emanate out into the world. You know, so that's a real quick overview. Um, I want to talk about the lines, just because it can be a lot. I know it's a lot of information, and it's you know I can go through it quite quickly because I've done it, but um, just not to get overwhelmed with thinking you have to remember all this, because you don't.
You
But
don't. You really don't. That's why it's important, though, Lori. Sorry, I'm going to interject here
yeah,
because, like, so probably a couple of years ago, I went out to the Gene Keys. I'd seen it. It was on, I don't know, Instagram or something, and I did the profile, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, it was interesting. It was a free profile. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. I didn't go anywhere else with it, but I also know that it wasn't my time as well, too, right? Because I needed to go through this season to go, wait a minute, there's more to me here. And I need to figure this out because there's too much noise out there, which then led me to that. And then, of course, meeting you this past year and the way that we met was such a blessing. So, what I want to say is, if you've ever done your gene key before, just like I did, but you're like, okay, that's kind of interesting, or you are interested, please do yourself the best service of all and just book a session with Lori to be able to go through it so that she can bring it all together for you. Okay. Because there's many layers to this, like she said, but each piece that she took me through that day was like light bulbs, guys, going off and off and off. And when I left Lori's house, I drove home and I smiled the whole hour because my heart was smiling because I finally felt like I had all the key pieces I needed to go and to be the person that I knew that I was here to be and to do.
mm,
So sorry, Lori. Now
no,
take
that's
the
great.
next one.
It's I always, I like to talk about that because it can look overwhelming and feel overwhelming when you see all these numbers and all these words. And so instead of it scaring people away, I want to make sure they know, very take it very small, you know very do your profile. And the thing is, what's nice too, when you go to genekeys.com, you'll see free profile at the top. You put in your information, you'll get this chart, but you also get a little write up which talks about your 4 gene keys of the activation sequence. So it's a great starting point. And I mean, even if someone just did that, it can help,
Yeah.
to activate something in them, to give them a feeling of being understood. So yeah, not thinking I like keeping things simple. That's what's in my chart. Um, and so, yeah, you can keep it very simple. But I like to let you know what's there and what it is that you're looking at. And then it's for anyone to decide what they want to do with it. So you will see on the chart with the gene keys, after every gene key, you see a point and then a number. So 31.1, 41.1, 27.3, 28.3. They all have a point and a number. Where those, so in the gene keys book, you won't find those numbers, the point number. You'll find your gene key 31, but you don't find point one. Those are the line numbers. The line numbers, um, they represent the lines on the hexagram. I think of them also as our chakras, if you think of it that way. And it's just to give you a bit of a lens of where you operate from with that gene key. So it's just added information of how you use the gene key in your life. It's kind of a lens to look through. So 31.1 for Catherine, line one is creator energy. The wording can change a little bit in according to where it is, but they essentially have that meaning. You know, a line one is creator. So again, when you think about leadership, that Catherine creates her own way to lead. You know, she creates that type of leadership. That's how that line one operates. An example to compare, I have a line 6 there. I'm a 56.6 life's work. 56 is the gift of enrichment. Line 6 is the line of teacher education. So how I operate is I'm not creating like Catherine is. I'm teaching. I don't have the leadership. I teach in my life's work something that enriches your life. The gene keys will enrich your life. So I come at it with that lens. So it's just the lens kind of how you operate through. The lines are in the coursework online. Each the activation sequence has its own course. The Venus sequence has its own course. The Pearl sequence has its own course and books. And within those, you find the longer descriptions of the lines. Okay, so that's where they come from, but they're not, you know, you don't need them. They're not in the big book. They're just an added lens of how you can look at your gene keys. So again, not to, to get anyone overwhelmed with it, but they each have a little bit of a different flavor. Okay. Um, I think an example I can give is let's talk about today. Today, we are in the 42nd gene key. So, like I said, every day we have, for 5.5 days, we're in a certain gene key. Approximately 5.5 days. We're in the energy of that gene key. So, we're actually just finishing up the 42. So, for the last 5 days, we've been in the energy, of gene key 42. It's about completing cycles, letting go of what no longer serves us, taking the wisdom of what we've learned, and later today. And so, because this is the last day, we are in the line 6, because your 5.5 days you start 42.1, 42.2, the next day 42.3, and that's how it goes through the days. So today is 42.6, and then later today we switch into gene key 3. So we go into 3.1 because we're starting a new gene key. So gene key 3, it's the energy of rebirth. Line 1, again, that new beginnings, creating, creative energy. So you can see we've wrapped up 42.6. Here we are completing cycles. And then later today, we move into new beginnings.
Mm,
We're always in a
powerful.
cycle. Life is a cycle. Little cycles, bigger cycles, really big cycles. So this, you can follow the gene key. If you get the Pulse, which is the Gene Keys newsletter, every week you get the Gene Key of the week, and you get the audio, and so you start to see and can follow throughout the year the energies all around the wheel, all around the calendar. So that's how that works. So
It
there was
also it also helps you too, Lori, if I can share just from my
yeah
own perspective. Um, Getting the newsletter and understanding and knowing where you are every day with the Gene Key, it's just phenomenal how it helps you to deal with the energies that show up in that day. It really does.
yeah
It gives you kind of that blueprint because I've many times, just even the other day on Sunday and Monday from the weekend, there was things that happened in my own personal life that I went, wow, isn't that interesting? Because it aligned very well with the Gene Key and how I showed up. And there were certain things that happened that I showed up in the shadow of that. And then there was things that I showed up in the
Mhm.
actual full on beautiful energy of it. But it helps you to also see from a world perspective too, not just your own personal perspective, but when you look at the gene keys and where we are, and then you look at what's going on in the world, it helps you to go, yep, okay, got it. You can understand why certain things are happening and why certain things have to happen in order to move into where we are going as well too. So I just wanted to share that little perspective from
yeah
somebody who's newbie at it.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it just gives you a little more understanding of the energy and what's happening. And Richard's audios are beautiful. He does a little audio clip for each one, so you get to hear that. You get to hear Richard's voice, um, which just bringing through that transmission is beautiful. So I had a little kind of a reflection of this energy of today, and it's asking, where am I being asked to let go so I can create space for something to emerge. So finishing up some old, coming into the new. So it just helps you to see kind of what energy is at play, right? So yeah, I thought that was a way to kind of see how it works. But yeah, so we'll we just continue through the cycles of the gene keys, and according to our chart, according to our journey, and how that's going to affect us. It affects us all differently,
Mhm.
and that's one of my greatest loves about having this work and knowing this work. It really helped me to not only come home to myself and understand myself, but also to understand that everyone else is also on their own journey and have their own soul's blueprint. So when you think, why aren't they doing that like that? I wouldn't do that. Why do they? It really helps you, like, just get out of the way and let that go, because that's theirs.
Yeah.
So it kind of brings you back to your own business, you
Mhm.
know, and that is knowing ourselves, um, understanding ourselves the best we can, so then we can then turn around and serve in the best way we can serve,
Yeah.
and let people, you know um, they have a journey, they have it helps in understanding that, when especially seeing someone go through really hard times,
Mhm.
um, not that it you want it to make you not care. It doesn't do that, but it really helps you to understand that um, sometimes you've got to let that play out. That is,
Yeah.
if we interfere too much, we're
Mhm.
interfering in someone's journey,
Mhm.
and can actually delay maybe what they're here to learn.
Right.
So yeah, that's where I think it really would have helped me, um, in my work in domestic violence, to be a bit more detached, so I could have, stayed more in my energy, knowing that
Yeah.
of course, you want people to be safe in that, but um, understanding a bit better of how these things are playing out.
Yeah. So that's a great segue into something I wanted to bring up because you and I have talked about this piece too, is that when you understand your gene keys, as things show up for you, opportunities maybe that show up for you, it helps you to also understanding your blueprint and understanding something that might resonate with you. It's funny because you can tie this back to your gene keys as well too. So do you want to talk just a few minutes because we've got about 10 minutes left, and we also want to share kind of the next steps for people to be able to do this, to work with you and stuff as well too. But I would love for you to share what we've talked about when you first seen the opportunity with Vital Health.
Mm,
I just, that was so beautiful in that conversation you and I had.
absolutely. I felt very similar to when I first found the Gene Keys, a real heart connection to Vital Health. And it was because I saw a lot of similarities between the two uh, companies, businesses, all the parts of it. Um, Vital Health and Gene Keys, number one, both about getting to root cause and cellular healing.
Yeah.
So, there's many things we can do in this world, many between, modalities and 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 our health and our supplements and do whatever. But if we're not getting to root cause, um, you can plant all the pretty flowers and do all the pretty things and do all the wonderful yoga classes. But if you're laying on the mat hating yourself, that's not it. You got to get to root cause, where the gene keys can help you get to the root cause of issues in your life. Vital health, because they they are able to penetrate the cell and really do that cellular healing and take care of root cause issues. Then you can, the other stuff can be add-ons, but they both come from that, really getting to the core issues
Yeah.
on
And
on
supporting the cellular being, right? Because
exactly
when you and I both
exactly
know, and we've talked about this, is that when your cells are supported, the body does the healing from a physical perspective, right? So vital health, right? Cellular gets into the cell because it's so small. We won't get into that piece, but because the nutrients can penetrate the cell, then the body does the healing on the physical side.
right
And then the gene
exactly
keys.
exactly it's that same idea. When you do your internal work, when you um, feed your soul with deep wisdom teachings and core healing, your life does what it's meant to do,
Right.
and the same as vital health. When you heal at a cellular level, the body does the healing, you know same as with anything. It's not us. The body knows how to heal, um, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all four bodies. And there's more bodies than that, but the four core bodies, when you give them what they need, we're in a society of overfed, of trash, literally and figuratively, and undernourished in deep healing. So the nourishment of the gene keys, the nourishment that comes from vital health, these are deep core cellular teachings and products, that do that. So that's a real link I find between those two. They both, one nourishes the body and the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really drew me in. The company as well, the synarchy, Gene Keys are very much about a synarchy that, we work together. We work together as a team. And so I saw that similarity as well. And also in the leadership of Vital Health, as with Richard Rudd, they are here to serve. They're here to serve, you know, um, not about them. It's come
Right.
through them. As Dr. Tony had his first product, came through him, and this Gene Keys came through Richard, and they have found a way to put it out into the world to serve. So yeah, the journeys are very. They both spoke to my heart. Absolutely.
And I think that's exactly why when you and I had that conversation, that's why I was so blessed to have been introduced to Dr. Tony and that team back, a year ago, March, and why it hit my soul so hardcore. Because if somebody had told me 2 years ago that I would be doing what I'm doing now, I would have said they were crazy. Right? But now understanding and learning so much more. And my goal in life was always to influence, inspire, and to help humanity raise the vibration of humanity. How do you raise the vibration of humanity? Holy smokes. Like plant, plant medicine, cellular level, gene keys, understanding your cells, your body's blueprint, your soul blueprint. I mean, it's just I'm so excited. I was so excited for this interview today. I barely slept last night as well, too, because I knew the energy was going to be huge around this, and this is going to be some openings for people. So I can't thank you enough, Lori, for doing this.
Oh,
Go
it's
ahead.
great. I just want to jump in because it just popped out to me when you said what you wanted to inspire, and there is your vocation, inspiration. So you have
Uh,
taken, your deepest wounds, and now turning them into your work in the world is to inspire,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I love it.
That's how it works, people. It's amazing. And if you really want to get a hold of, and because what Lori said, we are finishing a cycle with the gene key of this week. We are finishing a cycle and then we're moving into a new birth. So if you are feeling a call that you know that there is more to your life, or that this next part of your life, there is more to it, I'm going to encourage you to do the gene work, right? Do the gene keys with Lori. If you're physically feeling unwell, disconnected, reach out to us because we can certainly help you to understand from a physical aspect what your body signals are telling you, and then we can help support you from there as well too. Because my life has certainly changed this year, and I'm so excited for this year ahead. Okay, so having said that, Lori, we've got about 3 minutes left. So let's talk to people about, okay, how do they work with you, right? How can they get
Mhm.
involved with you? What's one of the things that you and I are going to talk about by the end of the week, and we're going to put together and kind of, tie it all together for people. So I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, sure. So my website and business Facebook page are Blue Spirit Energetics. Um, I will put in the chat afterwards, we'll put in my contact information, but that's the website. I'm on, the socials. I'm just under my name, Lori Andrews. Can always reach out through Messenger. Again, keep it simple. And yeah, so yeah, but Blue Spirit Energetics, my website, also tells you about my journey and stuff. And but yeah, you can always reach out through Messenger. Email is Lori Jean Keys, Jean. It worked out really well having the middle name Jean uh, at gmail.com. And we'll
Oh,
put that.
wow.
You didn't know that?
Seriously? No, I did not know that. Okay, that is pretty
No.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, it worked out well. So yeah,
I
we'll
would
we'll
say
put that
so.
in the chat afterwards too. Yeah, but
Fantastic. And then
again,
the last thing that Lori and I talked about, sorry, Lori, I cut you
oh,
off. I didn't mean
I
to.
was just
Um,
I was just going to be a reminder to go to the Gene Keys website as well, and you can do your free profile and get a little write up.
Right. Start there. Just go get the free profile and put it in there and just kind of take a look. And then even if you've got like ChatGPT, you can put a couple of them in there to have it explain it to you and a little bit deeper if you want to. But I highly encourage you to understand it on the level that we've just shared with you with my report today, because this report Lori did for me. This is what you get. Part of what you get when you go see Lori. There's so many other things that she gives you, but was key. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's trying to keep it simple because there's so
yeah.
much and there's so many more things within the Gene Keys. I mean, even if you go to the website and just play around, there's so much in there that is just it's soul food. We
It is
need that
absolutely soul food.
nourishment. Yeah, it's and we need that now more than ever.
We do. And we need to come together more
Yeah.
now than what we ever have as well, too, in community. And
Yeah.
so that's a great segue to close this off, guys. Lori and I will be working this week together. Lori has agreed to do a workshop on the Gene Keys and with us. So we will be able to take a look at her calendar and my calendar, but we will have it posted by the end of the week on her Facebook page, my Facebook page, all of the socials, and the spaces will be very limited um, because we want to make sure that everyone gets the right amount of attention when we're doing the Gene Key workshop. But if you'd like to really learn more and go deeper into the Gene Keys, because we could probably talk about this topic for a couple of hours, which we don't have today, come to the workshop. We would love to have you. So we'll post that out there as well too. So thanks everyone for joining. Lori, thank you so much for the gifts that you bring this world. You are one incredible soul. And, you've become so much more to me on my life's path. And I'm so glad that our paths have finally crossed. And I'm so thankful to work with you in the Gene Keys and in Vital Health as well, too. So much love to you, my dear friend. And
Thank
thanks
you.
everyone for joining. All right, let me just get us out of here real quick. 1 second. My mouse will work. Bye, everybody. Thank you.